Hi, it's Katie from the Michigan DNR Outdoor Adventure Center. In this segment of Nature in Our Neighborhood, I would like to introduce you to one of my favorite groups of insects, giant silk moths. We'll revisit these jars in just a few minutes. Michigan has 4 species of giant silk moths. These are some of the largest moths around. We will talk in depth about the first 3 species listed. First, the Polyphemus moth. Second, the Luna moth. Third, the Cecropia moth. And finally, the Promethea moth. So what are Michigan's giant silk moths up to right now? Well, since it's still cold out, they are in cocoons. Here is a photo of a Cecropia moth cocoon that was spotted by Natalie, another educator at the Outdoor Adventure Center, on a visit to a park right nearby our homes. So let's get back to the jars. My colleague Natalie and I actually raised some giant silk moth caterpillars last summer who spun cocoons and spent the winter in those. We have the cocoons still, as the moths won't emerge until early summer. The moths need leaves on the trees before they emerge and lay eggs, because the caterpillars that will hatch from those eggs need the leaves to be available to eat. I have the cocoon from a Cecropia moth. You can see that it's spun from silk, and there is a little bit of leaves that might be entangled in the cocoon. And I also have the cocoon from a Luna moth. So these moths are currently in their pupal stage inside of these cocoons. What does that look like? Well, there are other species of moths, different from giant silk moths, that pupate underneath the soil and therefore do not build a cocoon. I have an example of one of those pupa here that I can show you. This is the pupa from a moth called a regal moth. They don't appear in all of Michigan, just at the very southern border. There are more southern species, so they don't really come this far north. But if you look at the pupa, you can kind of see what it might look like on the inside of the other cocoons that I showed you. The Luna and Cecropia moths inside of those cocoons look kind of like this right now too. Eventually they will break out of this hardened shell, break their way out of the silk cocoon, and emerge as full adult moths for the summer. Once the moths emerge from the cocoon, they will hang on a branch or whatever is nearby to let their wings expand. These images are of a Polyphemus moth who just emerged. In the video, you can see the wings have fanned out slightly. Here are some photos of adult Polyphemus, Luna, and Cecropia moths. If they are lucky, adult females will attract a male with her pheromones and successfully mate and lay eggs. If they are not so lucky, moths might become food for bats or nocturnal birds. Adult moths will die naturally within a few days of emerging from their cocoons. They do not have functioning mouthparts or digestive systems at this point, so they do not even eat. If you raise a giant silk moth and it emerges from the cocoon as a female, she can be left outside overnight in a wire cage like the ones pictured here. Her pheromones will hopefully attract a male. If you find a mate on the wire cage, you can keep the female in a paper bag to lay her eggs before releasing her. Then you can let the eggs hatch and raise caterpillars. The egg's appearance varies from species to species, but they are all usually pretty small. After they are laid, the eggs will hatch within a week or two.
very tiny caterpillars emerge and are eagerly seeking leaves to eat. Here are photos of Polyphemus, Luna, and Cecropia moth eggs with newly hatched caterpillars. Giant silk moth caterpillars go through a series of stages called instars. Here are some progression photos of Polyphemus, Luna, and Cecropia caterpillars in various instars throughout their development. Caterpillar skin does not grow with them like ours does, so when they get too big for their skin, they need to shed. These stages between sheds are what we call instars. Caterpillars will go through 5 instars before they are ready to pupate. In some species, the caterpillars look very different from one instar to another. Eventually, these caterpillars are ready to build their cocoons, where they will shed for the final time and enter their pupal stage.
I hope that you enjoyed this information about giant silk moths of Michigan. Keep your eye out for caterpillars and adult moths this summer. Remember, moths are nocturnal, so you could see them flying around at night near lights in your neighborhood. If you're able to find any caterpillars or adult moths, or even butterflies this summer, take a picture of them. You could submit your photo to butterfliesandmoths.org, which is a great community science project to help track occurrences of moths and butterflies to help study their populations. Thanks for joining us.